am King David. Many of you have read my stories, my psalms, and just a lot of different things about me. Before I get too far into an introduction, though, I want to preface this with saying that I want you to keep in mind the idea that God can use seemingly useless and unusable things for His glory. This thread runs throughout my life, and I want it to be one of these things that's in the front of your mind as I tell these things. Growing up, I was the youngest of 8. I got kicked around a lot. I was a little guy, had to do all the cruddy jobs, tending the sheep and whatnot. Then one day a dude named Samuel comes up, and my dad lines up the rest of my brothers and doesn't even think to include me because I'm the youngest. You know, what am I going to do? Samuel looks over all my brothers and says, "No, it's not these ones. Is there one more?" And my dad said, "Well, yeah, there's David, but he's the youngest." And so my father sends for me, and I come, and Samuel says, "This is the one." And I'm the youngest now. Just let me go hang out with the sheep again. I'm good at that. And Samuel says, "No, you're the anointed of God. You're the next in line for the throne." And I was taken aback at this. I didn't know what to say. I was just, okay, I've served God in my life, and I guess I'll see where this goes. And so as I started to grow up, I just felt this peace. When I was obedient to Torah and doing what God wanted me to be doing, I just had this sense of peace about me that He'd carry me along in these tough times. Growing up as a shepherd, I fought with lions and I fought with bears that tried to attack my sheep, and I killed them. I killed them with my bare hands. There was not even a glint of fear in my eyes. I knew that God's Spirit was upon me and that I could do these things. A little while later, I was tending my sheep, and several of my older brothers had gone off to war, and my father sent me with some cheese and some different food to go take to my brothers as supplies and to find out how they were doing in this battle. And I got there and I saw a giant of a man, nearly 10 feet tall, clad in bronze armor, coming out before my people and before my God and defiling them, saying, "Will one man come out and fight me?" And I looked and I saw nothing but fear in the eyes of my fellow Israelites. These people, God's chosen people, these men of God that God had done so many great things in our lives, and all of them hid in fear in their tents. And I took what I knew from my days with the lions and the bears, and I said, well, God was with me then, and I haven't felt His Spirit depart. Why won't God be with me in this? So I asked about the camp, and I was like, what is the reward for this? And the guy said, "Oh, it's riches beyond your wildest dreams. It's, no tax for your entire family. And it's the king's daughter." And that's when my ears perked up, because you'll find out soon that I like ladies. And so I'm thinking, okay, I can do this. What do I got to do? So I end up in Saul's tent. I try on his armor, but Saul's a monster of a guy. He's head and shoulders taller than I am, and this armor doesn't fit. And I'm a shepherd. Come on, people. I don't wear armor. So I go out there, my tunic and a stick, and I pick up a rock out of the stream. I pick up a few others, but this one in particular was the one that went on to slay Goliath. And God used a rock to change the history of my nation, to change the tide of this war. This one single stone took down arguably the largest human being that had ever lived. And at that time, the greatest threat to Israel. A rock. And I held on to this throughout my life. But as we'll see, I didn't always remain faithful to God. As I said, I like the ladies. And that turns out to be one of my biggest downfalls and sort of this turning point in the story. And so this next thing I want to tell you about is the tale of Bathsheba and myself. Many of you guys have perhaps read about this in your studies and your devotions, but I want to give you my insights on the topic. And let me just paint the picture for you. So it's a slow Tuesday evening. I'm laying in bed. I can't sleep. And so I decide, I'm going to go take a walk. I'm going to hang out on my porch or my roof the palace, and I'm going to look around the city. I'm going to see the beggars and watch children chasing dogs with sticks. And I'm up there, and being a king, you've got servants around you all the time. They don't leave you. They just kind of sit there and they hover and they tell you things you don't want to hear. And in this particular case, I'm standing up there and I'm like, I was like, oh, there's a hobo sleeping. That's kind of cool. And I'm looking around, I'm like, oh, and who might that be? You know, I'm hiding behind the railing. I was like, oh, this girl has seen me. I'm like, Nate, do you see this girl? She's the most gorgeous thing I've ever seen. I have to have her. And this guy shoots out with a three-pronged response where strikes 1, 2, and 3. He says, is this not Bathsheba? I said, okay, I don't know a girl named Bathsheba. Probably shouldn't be staring at her like this. Number 2, she's a daughter of Eliam. And I'm thinking, okay, so I should be thinking, okay, so her dad's out there. This is a daughter of somebody I'm staring at while she's taking a bath. I don't really know why she's bathing on a roof, but that's what happened. The third thing he says was the clincher, should have been the clincher. He says, is this not the wife of Uriah the Hittite? A wife? And these things run through my mind. I'm like, yeah, she's still really, really hot. I was like, somebody go get her and bring her to me. And I don't know what happened as my servants went out there and they brought her back to me. But all I could think about was just how gorgeous she was. I didn't think about her family or her husband and these different things. My eyes burned with this lust that was deep within me. And I gave in. I took her to my bedchambers and I made love to her. The next morning she had left and I was thinking, maybe I got away with this. Maybe I made it out of this okay and unscathed, this royal runaround I gave the people. But I didn't. I soon got word that she was pregnant and the child was mine. So immediately I snap into covering my tracks. And I think, okay, I know her husband's Uriah. Let's get him back here. I'll make him sleep with her. And then the baby will be counted off as maybe a little bit premature. And so I put this plan into motion and I send for Uriah on the lines. He's at war. And I send for him and he comes home and he looks confused. I bring him before me and I say, go be with your wife tonight. Go be with your family and you've got a break from this war. And he looks confused and he was such a man of honor in this, and this tears me apart to think about it now, that he was such a better man than I. But he refused to go and be with his wife as his comrades, his fellow brothers in arms were not able to be with theirs. He would not either. He slept on the porch of my palace. He slept on the steps with the servants and refused to go be with his wife. And so rather than seeing this as this point of, man, maybe I should look at this guy and take his example and bring it into my life, I go into deeper cover-up mode. This thing is it's going downhill fast, but I can't stop it now. And so as the story unfolds, I decide, I'm going to send a letter with Uriah, a sealed letter telling him to deliver it to Joab, my general. And the irony in this is I've got Uriah carrying the letter that says he's going to be killed, but he doesn't know it. He's a faithful messenger, but he's carrying this sort of death certificate. He carries it out to Joab, and Joab reads it, and he's not really sure why I want this done, but he says, okay, my king. And the letter says to take Uriah out to the front lines, to the edge of this fortified city, and then desert him and leave him to die. And Joab does this. He takes him out, and an arrow pierces Uriah, and a second, and he falls to the ground. And I can't help but wonder what was going through his mind at that time. These questions of why must have been flowing just rampant. What did I do to offend the king? Why did my men fall back? Why was I left at this siege alone? And he died confused and terrified and humiliated. But when I got word of it, instead of feeling these feelings of grief I have in retrospect, I was calmed. I was peaceful. I felt like my mistake had been covered up. And I went on and I brought Bathsheba into my harem. She became one of my wives. And again, I thought this story was covered up, and I haven't felt any retribution from God. I don't see any consequences here. And then Nathan the prophet decides he's going to pipe up. And Nathan tells me this parable of a rich man and a poor man. And the poor man had a single sheep that he loved. It said that it slept with him in his arms like a daughter. He and his family cared for the sheep as it was their only one. And the rich man had a multitude of flocks. He could have had any sheep he wanted, but when he heard that he was having guests, he sent and he took the poor man's single sheep and he killed it and he ate it. And I was outraged when Nathan told me this story. I treated it like it was just some sort of case test, this law test to see what I would do. And I was outraged, and I said, this man should pay this back fourfold. And now you'll see in a minute that I ate my words. It was exactly that fourfold retribution that was laid out from God onto me. For this thing that I had done was evil in the eyes of the Lord. I sat there thinking, is this what a man after God's own heart does? And I hated myself for a long time, but as I went on, my children grew up. The child that I had conceived first with Bathsheba died. And then the next son born between me and her was Solomon, who would go on to succeed me in the throne. But my other children, abuse and murder and rape and these things ran rampant through them. Brothers raping their half-sisters, and then brothers murdering brothers. My children, my family was being torn apart. And my life just began to crumble before my eyes, and as these things went on, I just felt lost. I felt so alone. I began to lament. I wrote these songs, these different things, crying out to God, saying, what am I doing? Why are these things happening to me? But I knew what it was from. I knew that I had started this chain of events, this downward spiral in my life the night I gave in to lust for Bathsheba. And if I had just been obedient to God and done what Torah had said and followed the law and followed His will in my life as it had been so perfectly carried out before, my life would have been a lot happier one. But I didn't. I gave in, and that sent me downward. Now I didn't die terrified and alone as I might paint this, but still I look back at this point in my life and I think, why did I do that? But at the time I gave in to this lust, this burning within me, and it ruined me. But the story goes on from here, and I live out to be about 70 years old and proclaim my son Solomon king. A lot of things happen in between there that I haven't got time to get into today, but what I hope you can glean from this story is that even though I messed up big time, I sent my life and I sent my family into turmoil, God still loved me. And if you read some of my writings, you'll see that I still have this tiny flicker of hope within me that God's Spirit is still upon me, and that I'm still walking with Him, as dark as these times may seem. And I urge you to hold on to that glimmer, and hold on to obedience, and hold on to doing what God wants you to do in your life. And follow Him at these times when you feel these burnings within you, these passions begin to overwhelm you that aren't of God. Fight them. Fight them. Look to God and see that He has a plan for your life. And ask yourself, is this something that God would would have me do? Is this something that is part of His plan? And steel yourself, steel your eyes and your minds, and keep yourself sharp and well in tune with the ways of God and these things, and learn from my stories, from my downfalls, and take these things in your life and go from there, and know also that as far as you may fall and as useless as you may feel, God can still use you. He will use you if you just ask Him. And with that, I must return to heaven.